gone ahead and used the last little bit of rust remover I had as a test while I went out and got more. As we can see, it's did a pretty good job there. And on the bottom side there, that's a pretty drastic difference. So we do have more of this Blaster Metal Rescue rust remover bath. And the object is to soak it as much as possible. Now, I'm not sure how it's going to react to the painted black pieces here. I'm not sure if they're painted or powder coated. And there's also a plastic connector here, so we want to be careful. I bought brushes to continuously, because it should soak, but because it's an awkward object, we're just going to kind of brush it up as well as often as possible and try to keep it as wet as possible. All right, and you can see it's getting pretty mucky, and as you can see, the actual column is getting quite clean. So it says 2 hours for light rust, 8 hours for medium rust, and up to 24 hours for heavy rust. So we're going to continue to let this soak as is, and then we'll check on it here. This has only been like 20 minutes, and we're going to check on it here in probably another half hour to an hour. So this is only after about another 15 minutes, but it seems to be just not really tearing up any of the aluminum. It's actually cleaning that up as well. Looks like it's cleaning up some of the corrosion on the aluminum, some of the stuff on the fittings, the springs. So we're just going to risk it. It's looking great down there, and I'm just going to dunk it in the solution. I probably should be wearing gloves. No, if you do this, wear gloves. Don't be like me. I'm going to tip it a little bit so that we can get as much of it submerged as possible. And we'll check on it in another, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes-ish, something like that. And this is the after. So it still have a few little spots here, but it is proving to be safe on the plastic, safe on the powder coat, safe on the aluminum. Ooh-wee, don't that look good. So as you can see, I went ahead and cleaned all the pieces. I did leave the steering shaft soak overnight in the rust bath, and it did actually lift the paint off of the bottom of the shaft here. So I did go ahead and repaint that. Went ahead and cleaned all the parts as best I could. I repaired the cruise control using a cotter pin. There's normally like I believe a pin in there. We'll see how that works out. We'll see if I keep that or not. Put our bearing on, our lower bearing. The O-ring will be facing downward. And we'll go ahead and get it on the race here. I'll show you from the other side as well. And once you have it on there, we need to slap this this ring down on it. So I'm going to start by getting it the first corner in, and just kind of working my way around. So pop the other corner. Alright, and with a little push, it just clicked in. So yeah, it's a little bit of a pain, but just start with pushing the corners on and then just keep pushing closer to the back, and eventually it'll spring around. So I've gone ahead and stuck that steering shaft in my little freezer compartment here just to get it to cool down and shrink just a little bit. And then I also put the actual column out in the sun for a few minutes just to get it to warm up just a little bit, just so it expands just that tiny bit. See if we can't slide that shaft in halfway easy. Okay, I didn't quite film it because I was in a bit of a rush, but you can see we got some ice here. It's cold compared to the warm shaft, and we got it started now. So we can knock it in a little bit. I just don't want to go too deep because we don't know, but at least we got the hardest part in. It started, and then we're not going to put so much stress on the classical joint or on the bearings through these clips. So that's kind of why I wanted to get It at least stabbed it in there, and then from there it's a little bit easier to adjust compared to getting it started. All right, we're going to take the column tube and the steering shaft. Slip this on up inside the tube. And right before you get the bearing in on this back side, you want to make sure that you get these holes roughly lined up with the housing so that you can push in. All right. These are 12 millimeter. You don't have to get them super tight, but you do want to snug them up. Now remember, your nut is a metal nut, but it's inside plastic, so you don't need to crank down on it and break the housing, but you do want to get these nice and snug. All right. Okay, so next we're going to put on the ignition casing, tumbler, whatever you want to call it. But remember, we have this little locking mechanism there, so make sure that you're using your key and turn it on so that we remove the lock from the steering shaft. It's just going to make assembly a whole lot easier. We'll slide in. You can see there's these two big tabs here. There's also two smaller tabs on the bottom. The two smaller tabs on the bottom are going to go on either side of this little tab. And then the bigger tabs here, they're going to go on either side of this mounting standoff. I'm going to go ahead and take one of our bolts, and then there's the two that are closer together. The one that's away from the tumbler also just gets a normal bolt, and then the one underneath the ignition tumbler, that's the one that takes your bolt that has the ground wire. So we'll roll it over here, and the ground goes above that bracket, in between the tumbler and the bracket, and then it connects right here. Again, these are 12 millimeters, just like at the bottom. All right, now it's time to get our bearing. So we're going to take our nut off the end of the steering shaft, slide our bearing down. There we go. You should be able to push it in pretty easily as long as it's completely lined up and square. So it'll seem like it's not going to want to go, it's not going to want to go, it's not going to go, and then it'll just pop in. Just don't don't smash it with a hammer and that kind of thing. Just be patient with it. It'll go in. You can see that the groove is perfectly exposed for our pin. Now, if it's not exposed at all, then you need to back up and pull your shaft back out. And if there's too much, then you need to compress the shaft back in a little bit. But ours is in good spec, so we're going to slide our ring up as well. We'll take our snap ring pliers, and this isn't a perfect way of doing it, but as you spread them, it will make its way down the shaft a little bit. Once you get to a little ways in, it'll just kind of slide pretty easy, like so. Ooh, careful, you can kind of snap at yourself. You just want to make sure that it's actually snapped down. All right, there you go. And you want to make sure that it is in there really good, all the way around. It's sunk down in that groove. Once you have the clip, go ahead and reinstall your little plate here. Okay. Go ahead and remove these 4 screws. You can come in with the cleaned up turn signal and cruise control panel. Harness comes on the bottom side. We are working from the bottom side. Slip that on over the shaft. Line up the plastic alignment pegs, and then using a screwdriver, go ahead and get these Phillips screws going. Careful not to break your cruise control or your turn signal when you flip it over like. And careful again when you flip it back over. We can go ahead and put our steering wheel nut on, since we're not going to be putting a steering wheel on it quite yet. And then right here, let's go ahead and undo this clip by depressing these 2 tabs here on the corners. The door opens up. We can put our clean harness back in. Go ahead and close our little door. Should just push on. Again, don't force it. It's old. They're brittle by now, so just make sure you have it lined up. And it'll clip into place, just be patient. And then we've got our little bracket here. So push that harness plug underneath those 2 tabs. And then using the 2 screws, go ahead and reattach the harness plug.